guys, Andy here, and today I'll do an interview with Ian King. Ian King is the top physical preparation coach in the world, most influential coach there ever was in physical preparation, had a long career of over 30 years, and we get right into it. So Ian, thanks for doing this interview.
Thanks for the invitation, Andy.
Looking back at your career, Ian, what are the things in the last 30 years in our industry that had improved or which haven't?
Well, a lot of people expect that with the increases in technology that a lot of things have improved, and when you certainly look at your computer, when I started coaching there were no computers other than some big machine in someone's room somewhere. So I've seen a lot of technological changes, as everyone. But I got to say that I don't believe those changes have been matched in sport. In fact, I'm not sure if there's been a lot of improvement, generally speaking, in training methods. There may be some advances in the rehabilitation tools, in surgery techniques for rehabilitating athletes from injury, but generally speaking, I think the advances have been a lot less than what you and I might have expected, or the average person might have expected.
And what's the reason for that?
Well, the interesting thing about sport is that unlike a scientific study, you can't just change one variable and then monitor the outcome. And that's the basis of an objective assessment, because every day the athlete wakes up, they're a different person. Every day the weather is different. Every day their tension in their body is different. Every day they have a different thought. So we've got too many variables moving all the time. So it is very challenging to form cause-effect relationships, and you really need to monitor a large sample of athletes over a long period of time to make any conclusions, I believe. And therefore, there are not a lot of people who have had that opportunity to stay with a large group of athletes and over a long period of time and monitor them, because the nature of sport is typically, coaches come and go, athletes come and go, so there's not a lot of continuity. But I believe that continuity is a big part of how you learn how to train, and probably explaining why we haven't learned too much. Another factor that influences sport education is government funding, and government funding comes up and down depending upon whether we have a home Olympics or not in our country, and other factors. We have the political parties change, the political beliefs change, etc. So the continuity in sport education is disrupted. For example, if they learned a lot during the period of the Soviet Union and the period of East Germany, well, a lot of that would have been lost. So that's an example of loss of continuity. So I think these are some of the reasons why we might not have learned as much as we could have over the last 3 decades.
Thanks for that insight. It's definitely not something you learn at university, where you're taught that basically every 2 years there's everything new and everything changed and new insights, cutting edge information. Now let's say you're a coach and you want to go the path of really improving your athletes and improving the industry in general. What steps would you suggest to be the best coach you can be?
There's a number of things that you can develop as a coach, but probably the first thing I'd say is you need to treat yourself in the same way that you would expect someone else to behave. So when we expect discipline from our athletes, we expect positive attitude, we expect determination, and it is not fair or realistic to expect these things in others unless we are living them ourselves. So the first step for success in coaching, in my opinion, is to be the same person, or be that highly successful person that you want your athletes to be. The second key that I believe is success in sport comes from developing a culture of success. And culture isn't developed overnight, but the development of a culture is key to the long-term development. And thirdly, I believe a long-term plan is important, and obviously we don't always get a long-term with the athletes, but I believe long-term planning is critical. And fourthly, I'll add that generally the way the coach treats the athlete, we assume that athletes don't always do their best, and I don't agree with that. I believe that athletes do their best. Whether or not it was good enough on the day is another thing, but to have that negative attitude towards the athlete and treat them as if they didn't do their best, it really does kill the coach-athlete relationship. So I would recommend supporting an athlete's effort. They're out there, they're making an effort, and for whatever reason, if they don't come out at top, then it's a lesson. There's something to be learned. There's a discussion to be had. And the result we get in sport is simply telling us where we are now. The only question remains is, do we get jaded about that, disillusioned, or do we look at ways to get better? And so I guess the fifth key would be always look for ways to do it better. Back to you, Andy.
That's great. And I've been to a couple of seminars and also the boot camp in Australia, which is great insight into that. Now we started the new level 1 course for all coaches, not just physical preparation coaches, this year. And can you briefly talk about what's different with KSI events as opposed to formal education or other programs, and why people should go to the level 1 course?
Well, fundamentally, I believe what we do is very different, because what we do is based upon my 30 years of learning from the athlete and learning how to win and why we lose. And it is not content that is biased by culture, it's not biased by commercial interest, it's not biased by any other factor other than what's best for athletic results. So I think the underlying difference is that as far as the content goes. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is that, secondly, I do continually strive to make it better. And one of the key things that we've done recently to improve that is a recognition that most coaches fail before they start, in that I've identified a number of steps to successful coaching, and from a very fundamental and very basic perspective, we begin with our delivery, how we deliver the information to the athlete. And that is our starting point in level 1. Level 2, we go and we look at the content, and level 3, we look at the interpretation, and that is a very complex area. But I believe that if you lose the athlete, if you undermine the outcome at the very start, then it wouldn't matter how good the content or how good your interpretation was. You've basically lost the opportunities in the way it's delivered. And I've been involved with an incredible number of sports over very many years, and watched a lot of different cultures and how they implement. And there's one common denominator in sport delivery, and that is it can be done so much better. So the aim of our level 1 is to give any coach the opportunity to improve the way they deliver. And I've taken techniques from a variety of industries. I've taken techniques that I've developed, and I'm teaching them to coaches who want to learn, because the minute you change the way you deliver, it changes the way the athlete receives the information. So it is the starting point for coach education from a practical perspective. And this, again, makes us unique, because nobody teaches practically the practical side of coaching the way we can and we do. And that's why I think it's a great opportunity for coaches to do our level 1. And I can guarantee them that they will be blown away by what they even didn't realise that they might have been doing to undermine their success as coach at the delivery level. And this applies to, I'm not just talking about physical preparation coaches, I'm talking about coaches in all sports, at all levels, either gender, any culture. It's common to coaching. So there's some insights for Andy.
Thanks. And just that you there for all coaches. One feedback that I sometimes get at courses anywhere is that there are a lot of volunteer coaches around here in Austria, and they basically say all seminars and workshops and everything that's going on, that they're just volunteering, so that they're not educating themselves or going to courses. It's too expensive, too much time involved, because they're just doing it at site. And I know that you made a video clip about that. Can you just talk briefly about that?
Well, I recognise that, and I applaud them as volunteer coaches, and volunteer coaching occurs right throughout the world. I do volunteer coaching every day of the week, and always have. So volunteer coaching is the foundation of our sporting program. That's a subject in itself. But my question to volunteer coaches is that, when is the word volunteer and the word excellence opposed? When are they mutually exclusive? Why would a volunteer assume that anything less than excellence is okay? Because over and above my personal preference for excellence, most volunteers are working with kids or at the lower level of sport. Now, the window of opportunity for change is greatest for the young athlete than it is for an older athlete. When we give top coaches only at the end of an athlete's career, we're not having the same impact as if we had excellence in coaching at the start of the career. So whether you're getting paid or not, for me it's irrelevant. Do you want to give the best you can to the athletes you work with? And if you do, I would encourage you to educate. Obviously, what form of education you take is up to you. But personally, I see no excuse for a volunteer coach to say, hey, I'm a volunteer, this is as good as it gets. If it was you, would you be satisfied as a young athlete with that coach having that attitude? If it was your children, would you be satisfied? And I think the answer is no. So treat your athletes as if they were you in a younger form, or treat them as if they were your kids. And I believe that you may change your values about striving for excellence in coaching.
Yeah, what I often see is that volunteer coaches actually are just volunteer because they don't believe they can go professional. For example, here in Austria, the average pay for a coach is really, really low. It's probably lower than for a cleaning woman. So not a lot of people are prepared to take the step.
Well, you've heard you say it before. There's no real difference. In fact, the only real difference between a volunteer and a professional coach is one's getting paid. There's no suggestion by anybody that the professional coach is actually a better coach. They might want you to believe that, but I can tell you from my experience, there's no guarantee. Some of the best coaches in the world are volunteer coaches. So certainly don't let the concept of money stand in your way of greatness.